fellow travelers, and welcome to The Way of the Showman, where we view the world through the lens of showmanship. I am Captain Frodo, and I will be your host and guide along the way. In this episode, we're diving right back in with our wonderful continuation of our interview from conversation from last time with Mac King. Now, I didn't do a sort of proper introduction of Mac King last time, but as you have guessed, Mac King is, a star of his own, very own magic comedy show, which is a brilliant show. I have seen it several times when I have lived in Vegas, and it's currently now playing at the Excalibur Hotel and Casino in the Thunderland showroom in Las Vegas, Nevada. And I could highly recommend it the next time you go to Vegas to check him out if you haven't already. Apparently he's been in Vegas since January 2000. So that is an extraordinarily long run. I guess the only time when he's been off is, as he mentioned in the last episode, is during the pandemic, when the whole world was off, when the world of shows were closed around the globe, as all the listeners of this podcast will know a lot about my thoughts around that. And we got to hear some of that from Mac King last week, and we delve further in. It becomes more personal and more exciting. This next second half of the conversation, very fun. I think both of us were quite surprised at just how well the conversation flowed. And as you hear, I'm hoping that I'm going to get to come and join him in his croquet sooner rather than later. But I thought before we dive back into the conversation with Mac King that I just want to do a shout out to Nick DeFat. Nick DeFat is an extraordinarily, absolutely awesome comedy magician who I had the distinct pleasure of meeting in Denmark, was it last year? And although it was just that weekend, we hit it off from as soon as he walked into the green room where I was sitting, and we were chatting, and that night ended up in Morton with two N's apartment, talking about how we were going to take the card duck and make it the next big thing. And we had such a good time. And it is Nick's doing that I got to hook up with Mac in this capacity, since if you end up at the Excalibur Casino to see Mac King, and Mac King does not grace the stage, it could be because Nick DeFat is his stand-in if Mac is doing a magic festival somewhere or whatever, conference, and telling people about his secrets, then you get to watch Nick DeFat. But that, ladies and gentlemen, and anyone in between, is such a great replacement. I watched Nick, and I had one of the biggest laughs that I have had in years when he's got a guy up on stage and he's getting him to play a little whistle. I truly laughed so much that it took me the rest of the remainder of his half-hour slot to get back together again. So I really hope that you get to see it, and I hope that we're going to get Nick to come and talk to us here on the podcast. That's been on the cards for a little while, but it was part of my idea for a sort of a bulk of magic episodes. But you're going to get that at a later point, and I'm very much looking forward to it. Anyway, enough. Thanks, Nick. And if you are interested in magic, Nick's book, Offbeat, is a brilliant piece of writing, beautifully published in hardback. It's one of those books that I'm proud to have on my shelf. I've already used one of his gags straight from the book, like a little magic gag bit that I've already used a couple of times, and it's a wonderful read. So check that out at your local magic dealer on the interweb. And once that's all put behind us, let's dive back into the world of ideas in my conversation with none other than Mac King. And on that, because you perform
overwhelmingly in one venue. The way you grab that audience is so straight, easy driving for you. Does that transfer with those moments or times when you're out performing in other places as well? Like, have you got
Those are
techniques?
harder for me. Those, I mean, those are, more of a crapshoot. I feel like I'm really lucky. I mean, people come in to this theater that's got my name on the background, and so um, it and then but and they're there to see a show, and so when you're doing a show for a shipping company, and it's like we're gonna drink with our friends and have something to eat, and maybe who's the captain of the year or whatever they're gonna whatever they're getting together for. They're not expecting you, right? A lot of the time, and so it does, yeah. I mean, that's more of a. I feel like, oh shit, yeah, this is what real show business is like. I have to go out and try to, hey, come with me, please, come with me. It's less of that. When I'm doing my regular show, it's so much easier.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, I know from myself too. I mean, I have been, for a big part of my life, that is what I have done too.
Yeah,
so
when you're, when you're in a review show like or in a circus or a Spiegel World show or whatever, those people are all there for. Yeah.
And I mean, that has transitioned me as a performer now. Like, I used to just do my acts, and the fact that even in some shows to do 18 minutes, if I get to do both of my acts 18-20 minutes, it's kind of too long. People they don't want that much from one performer or whatever, but they often get to do it anyway or whatever. But
I think you're being overly critical of yourself. I mean, when I've seen you like in Opium here, I was always very happy to know that you were doing 2 spots instead of 1.
Yeah. So. And I am lucky. People, they allow me to do it, but it is it's almost an uncommon thing. But now I lost my thread. Oh yeah, so now pandemic happened, and I went back here because we couldn't continue to work on a visa that I had, etc. So came back to Norway, and then it turned out, just like when the circus asked me to put the shirt on, the theme park, it turned out like, oh wow, being here with my daughter and with my family around me, and my dad got sick, and then all this stuff was kind of happening, and then I came back, and all of these things just fell into place, and you go, actually, this is surprisingly good. And from not getting any younger, and doing 10 shows a week with that physical stuff I do, falling off that stage every time and rolling off onto concrete, like it was just quite nice to come back here and do events where you get paid more to do less. So that's kind of, but anyway, because it's a small kind of place, I have this need now also to come up with more material, and that has kind of put a fire into my belly that I also want to go long form, because I'm master of the short story or whatever. I'm doing these short bits, and I have done other full length shows, but never anything remotely like what you're doing or whatever. It's like these short runs. I do like 40 run of a full length show, and that's a lot to do a solo thing. And now I'm excited to do that, but so I have this drive now that I'm like, oh, I want to do a full-length show, and I also want to do a whole new family show based on my love for dinosaurs. I want to mix magic and dinosaurs. So I have a project like whole new, and you are the master of one show and all that. Have you got any desire to put to make a new show or something? Are you?
Somewhere in the back of my head, maybe, yeah, but it's for me. I mean, I really love changing the tiniest little thing and seeing what happens. And is this funnier if I put on this cloak of invisibility and I step on stage with my upstage foot instead of my downstage foot. Is it funnier that way?
Yeah.
And so, back in, I think back to, if you think back to like vaudeville, where, you would have been a superstar doing 10 minutes, right?
Yeah.
And that 10 minutes, and you've done this already. I mean, that tennis racket act, every second of it is perfect. And I think, people who aren't in show business, I think they, especially if they've only seen it once, right? They go, it's just chaos. And, I can't believe he just gets up there without a fucking plan. And,
who let this crazy guy on?
Yeah. And so, doesn't even know how to, deal with a microphone.
Yeah.
And
that's true.
So, but if you see it, or if you're at a certain level in show business, you see that and you go, fuck, man, every foot placement is planned.
Yeah.
Right. And so you've done that with a 10-minute thing, and I want to do that with an hour and 20-minute thing.
Yeah, you have done that. Yeah.
And so, but it's still, I still discover little things in there not every show, but every so often, there's things, and I go, oh, I can't believe it took me this long to figure that out.
Yeah.
So I love it. I love doing that.
Yeah, so that happens within my act as well, and it's the change of circumstances too that have brought this sort of desire. And I'm in this odd spot at the moment because I want to have created something. I want to create something new, but my honest drive is more intellectual at the moment. I'm writing the 4th season. It's like the 2nd season is what you're listening on. The 3rd season is now about 10 interviews or so. So there's going to be 12, 15 interviews all up or whatever before I start another season where I tell some things that I'm writing. And I'm so excited about the writing and the kind of reaching into the depth of the project that started during the pandemic. So at the moment, I'm more drawn towards that thing. And it has, over the last little bit, when I was listening to this juggler friend of mine, Jay Gilligan, and a performance partner of his, Eric, have a podcast called Object Episodes. And Eric, he is doing a PhD in circus at the University of Stockholm. And he was like, he started to describe the work that he's doing on his PhD. And he's sort of gone, I've realized that this is part of my artistic output. And when I heard that, my mind was kind of blown because I'm going, oh, yeah, because it's like I sidestepped into this way of expressing myself when the pandemic came. But as many podcasts, they came and went when the pandemic went because it wasn't your passion. But I truly think that I have something to say. And surprisingly, as odd as some of these things that I think about are, the geometry of showmanship, who is interested in that kind of stuff? As it turns out, people are, even to the more esoteric episodes, people are listening and giving good feedback. So it does feel nice to feel like I've sidetracked into this. But, now I lost my track a little bit. But, that I'm also needing to make some more kind of show-related stuff. But you were saying that so the pandemic came and you couldn't do shows. So what did you do? Like, do you express yourself creatively? In which ways do you express yourself creatively?
Right. Well, I worked on a virtual show. I did it. I worked on it for a few months, and then I did it, some practice shows as it was developing, and, it got longer and longer, adding, every few days we'd add another trick and trying to get it up to an hour or 45, 50 minutes. And then I did it. I got paid by a couple of theaters for them to sell tickets. And I did a couple of corporate events with it. And first of all, I don't know whether it was a good idea. It took place all through my house.
Oh, yeah. Interesting.
So I would do a trick in the kitchen, and I would do a trick, I had a trick with my pool table, and I had a trick sitting on my diving board outside, and I had a trick at my dining table, and then a trick in my bedroom, and a trick in my bathroom. And so I was going all around. But that made it a technical fucking nightmare.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Trying to get
funny
that
idea, but cool.
Yeah. So, we like a wireless camera, and then no, that doesn't, it cuts out too much. And so now we have to get a camera on a wire, and this wire's snaking through my house and trying to getting the sound, and Jesus. So it just wasn't fun at all. And so the technical part was so stressful, but also it was just, I couldn't figure out a good way. I mean, I'm sure if I did it 100 times, I would have figured out how to have some sort of interaction with the people that were watching. But I didn't have a good way to do that either. And so that's all I really care about at all, is that aspect of it. And so it just wasn't fun. So I spent, I don't know, kind of some money and some time, but gave it up. And then, so the other thing I did for fun, a few of me and my friends we used to play croquet in my yard here. It's just Las Vegas friends, magicians and jugglers. And we would get together and play croquet, and couldn't do that. So we all got Oculuses. So we were all in our houses playing miniature golf.
Oh,
and it was great. Actually, that was a really saving thing for me, is to be able to interact with those, because you can talk in real time and you're watching each other play mini golf. And so that was pretty fun. And then because we're like, hey, this is pretty fun. Maybe we could do a talk show with all of us together. Get some, sort of convey this camaraderie that we have, and have a guest. So we did that for a little while.
My battery is about to run out. I'm just quickly going to push button. So
here's to you.
Here's to you. Thank you. So you guys are
I'm still on.
Yeah.
My wife says hello.
Oh, hello.
She says you're her favorite act, but I don't know what that means.
I did not.
One of your favorite acts. Okay.
One of her, yeah. Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much. So you are connected up with your friends when you can't legally
so we did a little
mini golf.
Yeah, we did mini golf, and then we were like, maybe we could get the world in on this somehow. And so we did a little talk show on YouTube. There was like 6 of us, and then we would have a guest every week. And we did, I don't know, I forget how many, but that was pretty fun. But I mean, as soon as I got to do shows, that went.
Yeah. But it's an interesting thing. So I have a friend who is a clown teacher and whatever, Nalla, and he talks about that the core of what the clown does is to play and connect. And what you do as well, like you have that, I guess that is to some extent what comedians do just in general. Like you're in front of the audience, you're genuinely paying attention to, and if somebody offers something, your show is 1 hour 20, and if nobody is offering it, it's 1 hour and 5 or whatever, because there's room to play in that, and you genuinely want to connect to the audience. And when you just described just the words you said, when you go, and then I was like connected to all my friends and we were playing mini golf, I kind of went, that is almost like a methadone for the that same kind of thing. You're connected up with your friends and you're playing a game again, or
and trying to make each other laugh, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I mean, that game is a little bit that happens when you know, when you are with friends who are like to have a laugh, and like everybody is, you're telling a story and it's being interrupted, but it's being interrupted by jokes, and you got to keep going, and you're sort of playing this game where if somebody really nails a good joke, then we know, all right, 1 point to that guy. So,
and my family, you know, I mean, I'm lucky too. My family growing up was like that also.
Oh yeah.
And so so that was I mean, probably, I mean, I don't know yours, but I mean, your dad was a magician, and so I'm sure there was some of that.
Yeah. Oh, my dad is not as that kind of naturally funny. He's a funny guy, but more sort of in a dad kind of way. His angle into magic is technical expertise and a love of making and using fine electrical stuff that he makes, and that's what he does now. He doesn't really do many shows only at like a family birthdays or whatever, my daughter and my sister's daughter or whatever. But we have developed a really good relationship where we are talking about things that I would like to do, and then he builds me prototypes and types that I use. So now there's several of the things that I'm using in my shows when I'm doing longer shows where it's all created by him. And in the beginning, it was kind of like he goes, oh yeah, you know, if you're thinking about something that you need made, then I can help you. And having spent 25 years not living at home, and always when somebody says something like that, in my mind, I'm going, yeah, I got to make these things myself. You don't want to owe anyone favors or whatever. And then slowly we're sort of going, oh, it's a different thing, and it's family. Totally reconnected again over showmanship and magic. And he loves most to build these things. So then he sees that I'm doing the flea circus and with props that he has built, then it just, so then we can talk about it, and he rings me after going, oh yes, you did that new bit, and how did that go? And so that's been real good as well.
Yeah.
But you were talking about how is that for you, like the just getting onto that play and connect, like when you go out in front of an audience you've moved. I was going to say you've just moved after how many years at Harris?
I was there, I mean, it depends on how you count. Do you count the years that I was under contract, or the year and something that I was under contract there that was the part of the pandemic? I worked there I did shows from January 2000 to March of 2020. So
wow, 20 years.
20 years. And then I was off for a year, almost 2 years. And then I've been at Excalibur for a year and almost 2 years now, more than a year and a half.
Yeah.
So
because what was it that instigated that move?
So there was a woman who was my boss at Harris at one point, and then she moved to MGM Properties. I mean, MGM Corporation. So MGM owns, MGM and Excalibur and Mandalay Bay and Luxor, and Caesars owned Harrah's, and so she was a executive for Caesars. She moved to MGM, and it's like after she moved, she's like, "How long is your contract and what's going on?" She called me during the pandemic, and I was like, and I'm like, well, I still have another year and something, but I don't know when I'm going back to work. And so, and the people at Harris were nice enough I had a no compete, but it's like I hadn't done a show in a year and a half, so I don't know whether I'd already taken a year more than the no compete, right, where I didn't do a show in Las Vegas. So but they were nice enough to sort of let me out, and I moved over because of this woman.
Okay.
So it's I think it will. I hope it will. It's already been good, but I hope it'll be even better than Harris as far as money goes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Were you trying to attract more knights and wizards and stuff?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. We have a few horses that come to the show.
Oh yeah. I thought you were trying to muscle in on Piff's territory there.
Yeah. Well, there are more hotel rooms at Excalibur, and it's also, I mean, despite how underneath it all, how filthy my show is, it's also billed as a family show.
Yeah.
And there are more families at Excalibur. That's sort of more like
Excellent.
a family destination.
But yeah, I've heard you say that there's like that your show is not created or intended for kids, or it's not a children's show, but it's okay for children. And I'm billing most of my stuff as well like that. A bunch of the things that I say, they're not like I put my balls between my legs and stuff, but when I was doing Opium and it was a late night thing, I was swearing, but I can pretty much turn the swearing off.
Yeah.
So it's stuff that kids can watch, but it's not made for kids. And I think those are the best. Those are kind of like the family show where the adults are also laughing.
Yeah, there's no swearing. I don't even say damn. But I do imply that a woman should reach in my pants. And I do say explicitly that a woman should take her clothes off and tie me up. And I do, I do pull stuff out of my pants, and a guinea pig comes out of my fly. And so it's, but there's, I always say there's nothing in the show that I couldn't do on regular TV, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. There's something there as well, because of course in this day and age that we live in now, there is a lot of focus on this of asking somebody to get naked or whatever could be, and I mean, does anyone react to that in your show? The fact that you pointed out you had complaints or so that you never used to have?
Yeah, over the years, I only know of like 2, maybe 3 complaints. And, I mean, one, like on a Google review or something like that, where it's like, this wasn't for families, so this is filthy, or but for the most part, no. And do you know John Archer, magician?
Yes.
In England?
Yeah. I just know of him. I don't know him personally, but yeah. I know his work.
He's a really great guy and really funny. And, he and I, we were talking about this exact thing. And with somebody, we were having dinner in England, sitting around at a magic convention, and there were like, I don't know, 10 people. And somebody asked me something like that. And I'm like, I try to walk up right as close to that line as I can get still. And John said, this was really insightful to me. He said, if you don't walk up to the line, then they push that line back to you.
Very good point.
And I thought that was really well put. Yeah.
Yeah. There's also though something. It reminds me of we were doing La Soirée or La Clique before we were doing this show, and there was lots of male. Muscly guys, some of the guys who like the guy in the bath from Absinthe, David.
Yeah.
And the English gents, the guy who now does the pole act, Hamish McCann, who does the pole act in Absinthe. So we toured together for 12 years in the show. And all of them, and his partner Dennis, who also takes at that time, got their gear off, and they're built like masters of the universe. And our boss, Brett Haylock, who was putting the show on, he was like, someone was going, oh yeah, and we're getting this new act, and they're going to maybe take their shirt off, and he's going, oh, there's just all the guys, David, Hamish, Dennis, everyone is taking their tops off. It's just a bit too much. And I'm like, I also have my shirt off. And he goes, well, don't count. Don't count. And I'm like, what are we talking about here? One fine specimen of male physique. But there is something that happens, I think, when you are as goofy and when you're in the territory of clown, and I mean that in the best kind of way, that you are playing and connecting, and that you are non-offensive because you actually seem a little bit stupid, or like you might need some help. Like people frequently come to help me or whatever. Like you, and I wonder if something of that as well allows you that you become non-threatening. I mean, I don't know.
Maybe. I think it's also, I mean, you somehow underneath all of this, especially after a few minutes or 20 minutes or whatever, people understand intent.
Yeah.
Right. And so they know you don't intend to be mean or offensive, and there's some sort of gentleness or likability or combination of those things underneath all of it, and so, the other, like the other thing I do is after the woman's card is in my pants 3 or 4 times, depending on how many laughs it gets. I say, don't worry, I'm not going to ask you to touch this card anymore. Smell it. and to me, that's the furthest along. That could be the most offensive to somebody. But it makes me laugh, and it makes the audience laugh, and I've had somebody say, "Oh, Eugene Berger said, I don't think that fits you." And my argument to that is, yes, it does fit me if I do it, right?
Oh yeah. I just did it.
So it comes out. It might come out of the blue or seem unexpected, but now that's just, there's nothing wrong with surprise, right? They shouldn't know everything about you in 20 minutes, right? So when I say smell it, there's another layer underneath where it's,
this guy can go there as well.
Aspect of this person we didn't understand.
Yeah.
And so,
I mean,
those surprises throughout, I mean, are, I think, essential.
Yeah. No, it's when I say I want to talk about Jesus or whatever, that is also that thing. It comes in and it seems like such a non sequitur, or also, I don't know if it's quite related to that, but it is a little bit like that. You want to have something where when it's already been going for a while, that you're just past the halfway mark or something of whatever length you're doing at the 37 of the 100 minutes you want to have of the hour, I mean, then you want to have something come out that is somehow new. That's always a good kind of
yeah. And even if it's, it's like he held his card up that was in his pants, and he said told this woman to smell it. It's intrinsically offensive, but the intent is different, and the intent is not offensive. I mean, there's some. One of the things I do is when I'm especially the first person I get on stage. The first person I get on stage is a woman, and I'm helping her up the stairs, which I think is also, I can't believe I'm always shocked when I see magicians or anybody get an audience member up onto the stage and they don't fucking help them up the stairs. Come up and join me right here. Well, what? You could at least walk over and extend a hand, But so I walk over, I extend a hand, I'm helping her up the stairs, and I want to. This is almost like some sort of voodoo, but not. I really want to look her. I as soon as I can, usually on the way up the stairs, but sometimes it's from the stairs to center stage. I want to look her in the eye and just think in my head, it's like send this out of my eyes into her eyes, that we're in this together. It's going to be fine. I'm not going to embarrass you.
Yeah.
And so I want her to sense that in some way, that I'm that we're on the same side, and I'm not going to take her any place that she's, truly uncomfortable. And
yeah.
so I think that allows me to say these things that some other person might not be able to get away with, that it might come off as more offensive depending on who says that.
And I think sometimes it's enough to have thought through that. So you have thought through how this could be misconstrued or whatever, and you now genuinely believe that for these reasons it can work. Because I do think that there is part of the reason why I'm doing all this thinking about the shows and why I have published that whole second season that ended up being 40 episodes of mainly of me just talking about what I think. It's if you have all this knowledge and you have thought through a lot of these things and it's somehow in you don't have to be like ready and you can give it off verbally, but if you genuinely believe these things, they will somehow shine through your intent. So when I come out and I do a bit, and when I'm doing a longer show and I do this sort of more like a poem about the showman, and it is ridiculous, but it is also poignant and kind of got some beautiful moments in it. And this kind of the fact that I'm saying stuff that sounds kind of a little bit ridiculous, even when I say follow your dreams, when I'm doing this thing on top of the cans, which I wasn't doing in Opium, but I was doing back in the ancient times when we did Vegas Nocturne.
Yeah.
And I do normally, then the fact that I genuinely believe those things that I say and the oddity of the situation and the way I've actually crafted the act, it's not a coincidence, of course, but all of that means that when I then say it, although I actually say the words follow your dreams, that what before it, the reasoning for it and the conclusion of it becomes truthful, even though it is what you read on a Hallmark card.
Right.
I've had people send me an email and go, I heard you say that, and now I do this instead. I quit my job and I'm doing something else now because of that. So I know that it comes across as authentic and sincere. And I think that part of it is what I do there, but part of it is also the resonance that comes through in the way that you say it. So if you have thought it through, and that voodoo thing that you're talking about, where you're having some sort of connection with them, where you genuinely are looking at them and you're going, there is no one on this stage that is more stupid or ridiculous than me. And that they can feel that I will always be the butt of the joke. Yeah. And it makes me think of, I was reading Nick DeFat's book, Offbeat, which is an excellent book for everyone should buy it, or buy 2 copies. And he mentioned in there that he had been to a magic show watching The Amazing Jonathan. And you might have heard the story from Nick or whatever, or read the book or whatever, but his dad gets picked as the volunteer by The Amazing Jonathan. And he is just making so much fun of everybody. So Nick's dad becomes the butt of every joke from him. And Nick afterwards going, oh, this is so awkward. And going, and it must have been awful. And then his dad said, it wasn't. As soon as he came up, he knew that we are now a team. I will say these things to you. And that's a credit to The Amazing Jonathan.
Yeah.
Able to convey that in what now sounds exactly like your voodoo thing. He knew that we're a team. If I can say these things to you, we will be heroes, because people expect me, the showman, to be an asshole. Right. And they expect you to just take all the shit. And together we will destroy this room. And that the dad got that immediately from him is a testament to how good he is at that voodoo shit you're just talking about.
Well, I mean, yeah. And how good, I mean, what a remarkable performer Jonathan was, too. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Yeah. But I mean, I do genuinely believe it. And with that, I also think that, like, following that exact idea, that what's inside you also genuinely sort of reflects something, and particularly with you then, who's like, you're not pursuing and dreaming of making 4 more completely different shows with new characters. This show really is a reflection of you and a masterpiece in the way that the guilds would have said it. It's like you're creating this one thing that you're just working on. And so what do you think that the show actually says about you as the real Mac King? What bits of you that of who you are and what you like, what your feelings are and what your thoughts are? Does it reflect some of those things? If you look at it, we've got to look at it a little bit metaphorical, I guess.
Yeah. So I don't really talk about this very much, but this might be a good spot for it. There's a little. Years ago, I was at some seminar, some magic thing, and people were talking about, summing up your show in a sentence. And so at that point, I mean, this was 30 years ago or more, and I'm like, what would that be for me? What would that be for me? And so that sentence for me is nice guys don't always finish last.
Yeah, wow.
And so that's sort of the underlying little thing in my head for the whole show and what I kind of want people to get from me.
Yeah, that's beautiful. and it's it's insightful to have come up with that as well. Because now that you say it, I go, yeah, that's it. You're starting out as somebody who, they're going, here's a dork. And then by the end, you are actually the hero by the rules that you have created yourself. Like, it's, you set it up and they get pulled into, because that's the thing with you as well, with like how you have your suit, which is so unique, and then your little bags and your props are in the same, like it really is this alternate universe of this very nerdy.
Yeah, I mean it's the guy who works for me, Luke, in the bear suit and helps set props and do stuff. He's like, I just, I mean, this was a revelation for him. He's an amateur magician and sword swallower and fire eater, and so he's interested in these things, and so I like having him around. He's really interesting to talk to. He's a young, he's like 24 years old, and but a good guy, and he's just learning about being in show business, kind of, and so it's fun talking to him, and he's like, when people, it's like you're bringing them into the world of Mac King. I'm like, oh yeah. And he said, but that was like a revelation to him that could even be done. And
yeah.
And so yeah.
But he spotted exactly that, and that's what you also like when each thing that you introduce in this show, it does belong within your universe, and I find that's a masterful thing to do as well, like to know what is it that belongs in there. And of course, you've had a long time. That also, I think, explains some of the humility that you have as well. You're always so humble, and my show is just, it's like it's sounds like less than it is or whatever, when it's the favorite comedy magic show of such an enormous amount of people and of magicians as well who come and see it. But you were mentioning it in the beginning, this feeling like the show has evolved a little bit at the time. So, and I've had that to some extent too. Maybe all of us have that sort of slight imposter syndrome or whatever, but that you somehow, I have this show, but I am not was never in charge of making it. And that's why I was asking, like, how much of the structures and how much of these things were imposed and how much came organically.
No, I mean, yeah, I mean, but it is obvious, you got to have, it wouldn't be there without me.
No, absolutely not.
Right. But it's, but also there's just things that you can do, right? And to me, it goes back to being a good listener, right? I mean, and it's not just listening. I have really smart friends who see the show, and I have a couple of friends who every time they fucking see the show, they have a list of, hey, what about this? What about this? What about, they write down things. It's really helpful and great. But also just throwing out one sentence too is really helpful. And being able to listen to that. I also, I'm sure people like this too, that if you say, hey, what about this? They poo-poo your idea instantly.
Yeah.
Right? They don't want to listen.
Yeah.
And because it's not their idea.
Yeah.
I think. I mean, maybe they have a different reason, but in my mind, they don't want to listen because it's not something they thought of. And it's like, I don't have that big of an ego that I would, you thought of something that I think fits perfectly in my little world, and I'm going to use it if you're okay with it. My goal is to make the show better, not to be the only author of that show.
I find that really interesting. And back to Bob Smoot and Andy Kaufman, it blew my mind that there was two people working on the material of one guy. That they together created Andy Kaufman and had the lounge singer and all of that it was two people who were part of that same kind of creation. And then when we toured around for 12 years with David and all those guys, and Ursula Martinez, the woman who does the magic handkerchief striptease thing. So we toured for a long time, and the environment within our show was exactly like this, like you described, where everybody would all the time, I mean, with me and Ursula, it was in particular, she would comment on something that I did. Wouldn't it be better if you said,
and you might not take everyone, you probably don't take every one of those suggestions, but because you're the captain.
Right. But you get better because of it. And our whole company became better because of this. Yeah. And when outsiders then came in, because there was a core of us that was always the same, and then there was like a few new artists, and sometimes someone would come in and the same environment that we had. So someone would comment and they would take offense to it. And those are often then the people who weren't booked again to be part of it. But some people came in and had their minds blown by the fact that everybody is watching everyone all the time, and everyone who are experts at their field and who now see you working 5 nights in a row and can tell, oh, actually, this is a better timing on this, or have you tried this? And as a result, everybody grows. I mean, I think that's an important aspect. And I seem to remember hearing you talking about that you and Lance, and that you guys have had that relationship as well with.
Yeah. I mean, from the time we were like 14, I mean, we would, it got even more, sort of defined, or I don't know, when we lived in the same city, but we lived pretty far apart. But once we could drive, we would see each other a lot. And so, before that, we would see each other only at the, when our moms would drop us off at the Magic Club meeting or whatever. But I mean, and then we worked in this amusement park for 3 summers. Like I said, 3 shows a day, sometimes as many as 6 on a Sunday. But we lived behind the theater in a trailer, and so we stopped at doing shows at like 6 or 7 o'clock, but we still had access to this theater, so we could go in and work on stuff. And and so he'd watch me and I'd watch him, and it was really useful to both of us, I hope.
Yeah. No. Wow. So I guess to finish it up, it's like you're saying that the nice don't always finish last. That's also like when you were doing your goofy Belgian guy and the early incarnations of being this, when you're being pulled on and being so awkward, there's lots of stuff to say about that tension that comes in a live theater as well. Like when you're doing nothing, that builds it up really strong as well. But that that there was probably some people at that time who must have thought, who is this guy, and thought that you would finish last, perhaps.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
And you proved them all wrong. Yeah. Did you ever become the highest pay middle act?
I mean, I don't have any way to. I think so. Yeah, you heard that story. That was like one of the only goals I ever had in my whole life.
Yeah, it's good to have goals.
When I was a middle act in those clubs, my goal was to become the highest paid middle act, and
it's such a true to form. If Mac King on stage says that about his past of when he worked the comedy clubs on along Route 95 or whatever, and this was his goal in life, is to be in the middle, but in the top of the middle, kind of.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't long after I sort of stated that goal to myself that they moved me up to headline spot.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an I don't know. I don't remember whether I've told that story before. I was a guy, and I used to do this bit. I still do it, but I mean, I had a different trick. But the bit was, I have one more thing for an encore if you'd like to see it, and they would go yes. And so I would say, all right, we'll divide the audience in half. You folks say Mac, and then you say King. Get louder and faster, faster and faster. When it gets to be utter pandemonium in here, I'll come back up and do the encore. And so then the audience would chant Mac King. So, and I would do that as a middle act. And so one night, the headliner who was on after me was just eating it, just terrible. And so the audience during his act started going, Mac King, Mac King. So the next time I came to that club, I came back as the headliner. So that was. I felt. It's one of those weird things, right? You feel terrible for the guy.
Yeah, of course.
For your future, right?
Yeah. That's amazing. But it's so powerful to having them chanting your name like that. And when it comes from them too, that they go, okay, here comes the middle guy. And now finally we have the headliner, and then he's bombing, and it's a poetic justice there.
Well,
it was telling that club and telling the world, you're finished as the top of the middle and you're moving on to the bottom of the top.
Yeah. So this was a week-long, club gig, and so this was the first night, either Tuesday or Wednesday, I can't remember, but the rest of the week I closed the show, and but it was awkward as shit. Wow. Right? I mean, it was one of those clubs where the middle and the headliner act share an apartment that the club owned or rented.
Okay.
So I had to be in this apartment with him.
Who had basically been demoted.
Yeah. I mean, I think, I don't think I don't remember for sure, but I don't think they gave me any more money, and they gave him any less money. So it was still, had to have been personally humiliating for him.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. We like, even if he was being paid more, he knew.
Yeah,
it's like, that's the thing with comedy, though, isn't it? Or it's like it's with showmanship, but just in general. I used to always joke about that when I was in La Soiree for 12 years, where we were going to the next to do the next gig, and I said, "Oh yeah, should I get because I did a 3-month circus course in 1996, and I got a diploma to said I did the circus course." Oh. So I always say, should I bring my diploma to show you that I am to apply for the next gig?
Yeah, right.
But nowadays people come out of circus schools and whatnot, and they have a university degree in circus. But really, what it's about, it's like you have an audience there, and then you let somebody out, and within that first 30 seconds to a minute, whether you can have them in your show or not. And like, is it? Because it's such an immediate kind of thing, and that's the real currency. That's why it's so awkward to be in a apartment with somebody who had basically just failed as a headliner and hadn't been demoted.
Yeah. It was bad.
Oh, yeah. Just before I let you go, what
we should try to
end
you were
reading
more positive. We should try to end on something more positive.
Yeah, exactly. I was just wondering, what kind of books were you reading? Because I'd swing my camera around, and I've just gotten 96 boxes of stuff from Australia, all of our stuff, and 30 boxes of those were books, magic books, and all this. So what kind of books were you reading during the pandemic, or what kind of books do you read?
I read a lot of magic books.
Yeah.
But I also, because it's also my hobby, right? I really like magic and reading about how people think about magic, and
Absolutely.
But fiction, I read a lot of fiction, not science fiction, but just Rubik is the last book I read was Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. You know
okay.
Book?
No, I don't know that
I
one.
would highly recommend it. Really,
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow. It's a fiction. If you like, well-written, moving.
I do.
Stories that have insight into your life. I really recommend it. I just recommended it to my wife, and she just finished it, and both of us, you chuckle out loud and you cry too. So I really loved it. And then Rubik, which is a series of, it sort of reminded me of my act in a weird way. Rubik, like a Rubik's Cube.
Yeah.
It's been around a while, that book. It's a series of interconnected stories that sort of make some sort of whole. And quite like that. What else? I read a lot of old, like, mystery fiction. I really like Nero Wolfe.
Okay.
You know that story? Rex Stout is the author.
No, I don't know that.
So those are from, and if you're going to read those, I would recommend that you start at the beginning and read them in order. There's an arc sort of throughout. It's sort of a history of America in a weird way too. But it's about a big fat guy who's a detective, but he doesn't leave his house. And then he's got his assistant Archie, who goes around and does the investigating and comes back and reports to Nero Wolfe. And then Nero Wolfe sits there eating and with his eyes closed and figures out this mystery. But I love it. I think they're well written, but also they're really good books about friendship between two men. I quite like.
I like that too. I really like that. I like the Shawshank Redemption, for instance.
Oh yeah, unbelievable.
Which is incredible movie, and one of the reasons why I also like it is exactly for that. It's like it's a genuine relationship friendship between two men, and it is rare to see in movies, and or find in books.
Yeah. Have you read The Green Mile?
Yes, I have. Yeah. Green Mile,
like
and also because the weird thing there is like the Shawshank Redemption. Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption, and the short story The Body, which is arguably two of the best Stephen King story adaptations into movies, came from the same book of novellas as well. And they're both not quite they're unusual stories for him, and I think The Green Mile is kind of in that same sort of vein of writing as well, and that's also set in that same prison, isn't it? Yeah, that's very interesting. And wonderful.
What are you reading? You're always dropping really amazing.
Well, currently I'm reading a book called Humankind, and it's kind of like it's a way for me to reimagine, because people often talk about humans and humankind as being a nasty, brutish species, and we do all these terrible things. And this book, it starts out telling, you've heard of, you might have read of The Lord of the Flies, William Golding, and it was made into a movie,
Sure.
which is a fiction story. Yet it has perniciously gone into the popular imagination of the world as if this is almost like
this is what would genuinely happen if a group of young humans had to survive on their own. They would turn to warfare and fucking animals
and all this. Yeah, but it turns out, and he does a whole bunch of exploration, this guy. His first name is Rutger. I can't remember. It's German, but it's been translated into English. Humankind, A Hopeful History or something it's called.
Oh.
And it opens up with him finding on an obscure blog a reference to a story of a bunch of boys being stranded on an island for, I can't remember how long, but like a year and a half or something like that. So it's a real Lord of the Flies, but everything that happened on this island is the exact opposite of what happens in Lord of the Flies.
Great.
They knew that they were going to die if they did not manage to collect all the rainwater, and the ingenuity of and then he goes through a wonderful bit of journalistic investigation to find where it is, and finds a little snippet and a reference here, and finds several references, and finds then, all of them come from this person, manages to contact them, finds these people, and can go and interview them. The last living.
No, all right, good. I've written it down. That'll be next.
And then it goes on, and some of this it's related to the work that I'm doing now on my next season of stuff. So, yeah. And then fiction-wise, I just finished reading a book, which is like a post-apocalyptic kind of book after an influenza kind of thing. I read some of those books, and this was called the Revivalists, and it's a couple, a man and a woman who have a radio, and their daughter is living in California, and then this crazy pandemic happens, and most people die or whatever, but somehow all three of them survive. And then because she knew that the dad had a radio, she manages to contact them, and she basically just says, "Oh yeah, I'm alive, and I'm about to join the Revivalists," which she's joining this cult. And then it's a journey of a husband and a wife who goes to slowly and through an America then. So she drives through, and it's particularly bad in Nevada, actually. So it's beautiful characters of that's, and it's the woman is colored and the man is white, and how wonderfully that, and what that does then to the daughter, and how these two polarities of what happens then in the America that they drive through on the way there becomes, it's not just that it is, they just happen to be, like in your show, where when a Fig Newton happens and the thing here, everything spins around, and topics that invariably comes up with racism and even slavery and all this sort of stuff, the way that is woven in and is actually an integral part of what makes the plot work, and the crazy situations they get into. Very, very nice book called Revivalist. I can't remember then.
I've written it down. I'll find it. But that sounds really great. Have you read? Read any Neil Stevenson?
No, I haven't actually. But I was unpacking the boxes here, and I was just before here now, because I spoke about Andy Kaufman. I was looking at, so he's written called Cryptonomicon.
Yeah, that's one I really love. Yeah.
So that book is standing in my shelf downstairs, and I think it might be my wife's brother's book, because he's a games designer. He designed the game. He's working on making the games, the Halo games, if you're not know about that sort of stuff. But he's a science fiction fan. But Neil Stevenson,
The latest one I read, was like a couple books ago, called Fall. Yeah, and what made me think of it just now is they're driving across the U.S. and so outside this is just a small part of this book, Fall, but outside the big cities on the coast, it's in the near future. And America, they call it Ameristan. And so when they're driving from like New York to San Francisco, you got to fucking have machine guns mounted on your car because these nuts are going to come out of the woods. And yeah. So yeah, it's really that's a small part of the book, but
but it sounds interesting.
Yeah. The book is mostly about uploading your consciousness to the before you die to the the cloud. And can you live on in that way? And so
interesting.
Yeah.
It is interesting sometimes with speculative fiction when they are not just completely out in space opera, but that it's set in the near future. That's kind of interesting.
I quite like that, and I wish that there was more about this journey across the U.S. and all these nuts that they encounter.
Yeah, well, there's a bit of that going on there, and you can see how much you can recognize yourself in what you think would happen if the pandemic would have been even worse, because it gets pretty bad when these guys in the revivalists get to Nevada. So
all right, good. That's on my list now.
Yeah. Very good. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
My pleasure.
And it's so nice with these with having a podcast or whatever. It's that you can then have a valid reason to have a long conversation, because this is the most you've spoken.
I wish it's a pity that you're no longer here and can play croquet or hang out in the backyard and play games and laugh.
I would love to be there in person. Hey, it's not out of the question that I'm at least going to come and visit for some time. So who knows? I'll call you up then and say,
Please.
Hey, have you got an extra set of croquet clubs?
Yes, we do. With your name on it. Almost literally. Almost.
Almost. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being on the show, and it was a pleasure talking to you.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. It's really great to talk to somebody about these sorts of things.
Great. Have a great day. And are you doing shows today?
Yeah, I am. I'm going to go do a show here in a bit, and I'm very excited.
Excited.
Almost every time I'm excited. Still, it's crazy.
All right, and thus concludes the first episode of the Way of the Showman book club with yours truly and Mac King. I'll post links to some of those books we talked about there in the end. And really interesting, really fun to hear all the stories from Mac. And I'm looking forward to playing croquet on his lawn in the not too distant future. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. And I hope you enjoyed it enough to maybe, join up and follow me on The Way of the Showman at Instagram, or if not, tell your friends about the podcast. It's the best way for us to find new listeners as wonderful, as beautiful as yourself. Until next time, take care of yourself and those you love, and I hope to see you along the way.